Hi, algebra students. In this video, we are going to focus on some review of Algebra 1 in chapters 2 through 5. So I'm going to work through some problems that will help you with your review assignment dealing with chapters 2 through 5. Would probably be a good idea as I do these to copy them down or even test yourself before I do the example, pause it, do the work in your notebook, and then unpause it and follow my work and check your answers and check your work as we go along. So we're going to evaluate this expression when x is -3, y is 2, and z is -1. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the expression, but I'm going to plug in these numbers. So we have absolute value of 2 times x is -3, minus y, which is 2, close the absolute value. And then the denominator, we have the absolute value of z, which is -1, minus 3 times x squared, so -3 squared. So let's evaluate the numerator first. So 2 times -3, that's -6. So we have -6 minus 2 in the numerator. And the denominator, I'm just going to leave this absolute value of -1 for now. Minus 3, I'm going to do the exponent here. -3 squared means -3 times -3, which is 9. So this is minus 3 times 9. I'm going to go up here now. So -6 minus 2, that's -8. Leave it in the absolute value symbols. Again, I'm going to just leave the -1 in the absolute value symbols. I'm going to do -3 times 9, which is -27. Now I'm going to actually evaluate the absolute value. So absolute value of -8 is 8. Absolute value of -1 is 1. 1 minus 27 would be -26. So we get 8 over -26. I could move the negative sign just in front of the entire fraction, -8 over 26, but I do need to simplify. So I can divide 8 and 26 both by 2, and I would get -4/13, and I would just leave my answer like that. On Canvas, when you submit answers, you'll just enter it just as a fraction, just like this. Just make sure you put the negative, no space in between, but -4/13. Here's another one. You are joining a gym to work out during your free time. Lots of that nowadays, right? The gym charges a one-time registration fee of $89 plus $8 per visit. Write an equation for C, the cost of going to the gym, for V visits. All right, so we're supposed to write an equation. That means I have to have an equal sign. It tells me variables. C is the cost, V is visits. So I'm going to write that down. C equals cost, V equals visits. Some other things that I know. Registration fee is $89. And then I also know plus means it's going to be an addition problem here. And I also know it's $8 per visit. So per visit is $8. That word per is another indicator word. It means every single visit is $8. So that indicates multiplication here between the $8 and the number of visits. So here's our number of visits times the $8. So I think we can start putting an equation together. Again, I like to start with the equal sign and what it equals. So we're writing an equation for C. So we're trying to determine the cost. So C equals, on the other side of my equal sign is the information it gives me to figure out the cost. So that's all the money. We have this $89, just a flat one-time fee. They're not paying this every visit, it's just one time. Plus, we know we're going to have an addition problem, $8 per visit. Now, the order you write this in, it doesn't really matter. I typically like to write the one with the variable first. So I'm going to put the $8 per visit, since we already decided that's multiplication. So $8 times the number of visits, 8V. And I'm not going to worry about the decimal point and the zeros. plus the $89. So this would be our equation for C, which represents the cost of going to the gym for a specific number of visits, V. C equals 8V plus 89. And when you enter this on Canvas, just make sure you don't put any spaces in here. Just no spaces, all lowercase variables and everything. Use the appropriate variables. Solve the linear function for y. What this really means is we're just getting y by itself. That's all that means. We want y isolated all by itself. So 18x minus 2y equals 26. We want to move everything over and get y by itself. So we want to subtract 18x from both sides. That leaves negative 2y equals negative 18x plus 26. Now we got to get rid of the negative 2 by dividing, and we have to divide every single term by negative 2. So that leaves y equals negative 18 divided by negative 2 is positive 9x. Positive 26 divided by negative 2 is negative 13. So when y is isolated, we get y equals 9x minus 13, and that's that function solved for y. Solve the algebraic proportion for q. So proportion, we've talked about proportion a little bit here and there throughout the year, but a proportion means that cross products are equal. So proportion is two ratios or two fractions that are equal, and a property of that is that the cross products, when we multiply diagonally, those things are equal. Only thing that we have to be real careful about in this one is we have to do 4 times both of these numbers. It's almost like saying 4 times this group. So it's distributive property is equal to the other cross product, which is 24 times another group, q minus 1. So we have to distribute. 4 times 5q would be 20q, 4 times 4 would be 16, plus 16. That's equal to 24 times q is 24q minus 24. And now we just have an equation based on those cross products that we have to solve. So let's subtract 20q. So that leaves 16 over here. Reason I moved the 20q is because it was the smaller one out of these two. So that's going to leave me with positive 4q minus 24. Add 24. 16 plus 24 is 40. Now divide by 4. And q is going to equal 10. So again, proportion, two fractions, two ratios that are equal. And a property of that is that the cross products are equal. Another equation to solve. This one we're just solving for x. So first thing I see is we have to do distributive property, and I have to be super careful. That's a negative 5 there. So I'm going to get negative 3 equals 12x is going to stay. Negative 5 times 2x is negative 10x. Negative 5 times negative 7 is positive 35. I can combine the x's. 12x minus 10x is 2x. Now I want to subtract the 35 from both sides. So that gives me negative 38 equals 2x. Divide by 2. And we'll get negative 19 for x. Find the x-intercept. So x-intercept is when the graph crosses the x-axis. That means it's when y equals 0. So to find the x-intercept, we're going to change y to 0, and we're going to solve for x. So instead of 5 times y here, I'm going to put in 0. I'm making it equal 0 because I want to figure out when it crosses the x-axis. 5 times 0 is 0, so my equation just becomes negative 3x equals negative 15. Divide both sides by negative 3, and x would be 5. And the x-intercept technically is an ordered pair, but when you enter this in Canvas, I'm only looking for the number for x, and you don't have to put the variable, just the number. Last one, and we'll wrap up chapters 2 through 5. So we're writing an equation again, and we're going to do this in slope-intercept form. if you remember, that is y equals mx plus b. M is the slope, b is the y-intercept. So we're writing an equation in this form of a line that passes through -1, 2, and is parallel to the graph of y equals 5x plus 4. Parallel is key. It means it has the same slope. Two lines that are parallel have the same slope. So this graph has a slope of 5. That means that the line we're going to create, the equation that we're going to create, also has a slope of 5. So we already know, I'm going to do it in blue. We already know slope of our line is 5, and it goes through -1, 2. I am done with this equation now. This equation just told me the slope of my line. Now I have this information. I have the slope and I have a point. There's a couple different ways we can do this, but one way is to write it in point slope form. Since we have a point and a slope, point slope form is y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1, where x1 and y1 are the coordinates of the point. So y minus the y coordinate, which was 2, equals the slope times x minus the x coordinate, but since the x coordinate's negative, that's minus -1, which would become +1. Now it's written as an equation. This is point slope form. We want to get it to slope intercept. So all I have to do is distribute, get y by itself. So 5 times x is 5x, 5 times 1 is 5. Now I just need to get rid of this -2 by adding 2 to both sides. And we get y equals 5x plus 7, and there's slope intercept form. Slope is 5, just like we saw up here, and then y-intercept turns out to be 7. So these two equations represent parallel lines. You can see they have the same slope, just different y-intercepts. So here's the equation of our line. Again, when you enter this in Canvas, just make sure that there's no spaces if you have to write the equation. And I hope that helps with chapters 2 through 5. Have a great day, guys.